AI Gateway is in public preview, and if you have never heard it, it mainly allows you to manage AI traffic across a wide range of models from OpenAI to Anthropic and Meta models. So we introduced a couple of new features here, including user tracking, payload logging, and guardrails. And question to you, Lara, is why did we build AI Gateway and why our customers should use it?
More and more companies are starting to use both open source and proprietary models. And the problem is that they have a lot of challenges in terms of tracking usage, monitoring costs, also security risks. So, for example, if you're deploying your app on OpenAI, an app on OpenAI, but then you're running into rate limits, this could potentially break your entire application. And if this application is used by customers, whether they're internal or external, you need to have a solution in place, like a fallback solution in place where you can use another model, for example. Another issue that we saw with customers is that Azure has a limit sometimes on how many tokens per minute you can use per model. So sometimes you can also just run out of tokens. And also, what customers really wanted to see when using building Gen AI apps is that they wanted to have payload logging. They wanted to have a place where they could log the requests and the responses that are sent to LLMs. This is very valuable because you want to track what's happening over time for quality purposes, but also you want to log all this valuable information so that then you have a data set that you could use for evaluation purposes to fine-tune a smaller LLM, for example. And finally, the challenge that we want to solve here is that we want to avoid having someone, calling a massive table on their LLM, because this can incur huge costs, of course, and you need to prevent also people from sending confidential data to OpenAI.
Yes, and also, there are so many models coming out all the time, so it's good to keep our options open, which brings us very nicely to the benefits of the AI Gateway. So, what are those?
When you use the AI Gateway, you can easily switch between proprietary and open source model without changing your client app. So what sets AI Gateway apart is that it supports all the AI assets. So whether it's traditional models, Gen AI models, whether it's proprietary LLMs or open source LLMs, but also chains, agents. So you don't need to have several systems in place. Also, it enables routing and traffic splitting between different models. That's really useful if you want to do A/B testing or if you want to distribute your workloads across several providers. So, for example, if you need to handle high demand. And it's great for observability because AI Gateway allows you to track your usage across all of your endpoints in your account. And that allows you to identify when there is abuse and implement some chargeback systems. And you can also enforce permissions, rate limits, guardrails to prevent data leakage and, filter out unsafe requests and responses. And in general, it's just very good for quality monitoring because you have your requests and your responses logged, your traces, and you can build your evaluation data sets.
For me, one of the biggest advantages is actually the fact that you can query any model through the same interface, no matter if it's open source or custom or, proprietary. So are there any things we should be aware of?
One thing to be aware of is that currently, because AI Gateway is in public preview, it's only available for external models as a first step, but very soon it's going to be available for all models.
So we're saying that any model, custom agents, chains, anything like that will pass through the gateway by default.
Exactly. But right now we can already see how it works in action. So if I create an endpoint and I create an external model, so for example, OpenAI, you can add all your configs here. You have this AI Gateway section now. There are two tables that you need to be aware of that are very important in AI Gateway. First is the usage tracking table. So this is what is going to monitor all of the endpoints in the account. This is meant to be accessible only by admins to track the usage of endpoints. Then, of course, they can, delegate access to certain users. But thanks to that, they can see the endpoint name, the requester, and the count of input and output tokens over time. And so you can see what users are doing with your endpoints. Then you've got inference tables, also called payload logging tables. And so that captures the actual requests and responses, the duration time, HTTP status codes for a particular endpoint. Just note this table. This is going to be a Delta table managed by UC because you have the request and the response, there could be confidential data in this, which is why for security purposes, we want this to be in UC and managed by the customer instead of being a table that is curated for you by Databricks like the one above. Then you can add your AI guardrails. So here you can input safety. You can do PII detection and then decide to block when there's PII. And what's very interesting is that you can add keywords that are valid for your input or output, but also keywords that are not valid that we do not accept. And of course, rate limits you can set per user or per endpoint. So now let me go.
In here, it seems that, some of these features you can enable or disable. So is this because some of these features will be paid versus not? So if you use it, you pay. If not, you don't.
Yes. Each of these features, whether you will only be charged for it if you enable the feature, basically.
Amazing.
So now let's just go to an already created endpoint. So if I go here, you can see first that here we're like splitting the traffic between two providers, which is good if you have a higher demand. And here you can see I can edit it, but this is what's created. And so first you have your system table. So if we explore it here and we go into sample data, you can see what it looks like. But so you have your account and then you can see the requester, the time that it was requested, and then the input token count and output token count. And all of this information, nothing prevents you from, visualizing this into a dashboard that you build using, AI BI dashboards on Databricks. So you can see here, I can see the sum of total tokens for all the endpoints in the account. But again, this information is available to account admins, right?
Very interesting here on the left, top left, it says Ask Genie. So
Yes.
it seems like that now you can just open a Genie window and start interacting with the data behind the dashboard through natural language.
Exactly. That's a very good point. And as you can see, they also put some suggestions of things that you may want to look for. But this is, you can leverage Genie on this AI BI dashboards, which is leveraging the data from the system table. And so if I go back here, this is the inference table that we talked about. And so if I go into the sample data, the difference here is that, so you can see the requests. So for example, how to change my car's tires, and then the response from the LLM. And so if you expand here, you'll see the actual response. And this is a super valuable data set to build over time, for evaluation purposes or to fine tune an LLM based on this data. And again, here, I expect at some point that probably Databricks will be making those, those visualizations out of the box, for customers. But right now you can build a dashboard like this, where you monitor all of your endpoints, but then you could also monitor all the requesters. And here you can just you can expand on all the payload logging tables. You can also look at the average execution duration by model if you want to compare them and monitor all of the usage. Nothing prevents you from also combining the system table with, your payload logging table and look at the PII because, we were allowed to detect a PII. And here, I think they also set up a lakehouse monitoring monitor on top of the payload logging table. So you can see here so that they could track the quality over time.
Very nice.
Yes.
This is
And
like the
again,
lakehouse monitoring we discussed last time.
yes, exactly.
Nice.
We have another video that talks about how to use lakehouse monitoring that you can check